Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Urvashi Agrawal. I'm a legal editor and outreach coordinator at Manupatra, and I would like to welcome all of you to Manupatra Academy's summer webinar series. Today's topic will help us learn about how practice development and corporate communications are an essential need for law firms and lawyers like us. And now I would like to welcome our panelists for today. We have with us Ms. Archana Venkat, an engineer and MBA. She is the Chief Marketing Officer at Trilegal. She has an experience of more than 17 years in varied roles such as journalism, marketing, business development, operations, etc. Archana is passionate about empowering people to advance in their careers. We also have with us Ms. Ashima Ohri, a living example of pursuing non-traditional roles throughout her own career, spanning more than 13 years. Practice Innovation Officer at Law Offices of Panag and Babu, she believes that the pandemic has resulted in an exponential rise in demand for an upstanding virtual presence with a good digital content cadence. Our third speaker for the day is Ms. Khushboo Luthra, who's a partner and Chief Marketing Officer at HSA Advocates and brings with her more than 14 years of experience in the industry. Far from the traditional path, her MBA degree was followed by an LLB. She's a firm believer in using technology for firm-wide digital integrations and automation. I would also like to introduce our moderator for today's session, Ms. Priyanka, COO, Manupatra. She has been working at the intersection of law and technology for over 2 decades now. Welcome, ladies, and over to you, Priyanka, ma'am, now.
Thank you, Urvashi, for kickstarting this. And yes, women power all here. And thank you, Archana, Ashima, and Khushboo for joining this conversation today. And a very good evening to everyone who has joined us today. And I can still see people trickling in. So, without much ado, let me just dive in and keeping the title of the webinar today. So in many organizations, we've seen that the same person or teams handle the responsibilities of sales, marketing, advertising, business development, and practice development, at times blurring the boundaries between them. So to set the context for today's conversation, if I can direct the first question to you, Archana, if you could help us understand the nuances between all these terms, sales, marketing, advertising, business development, practice development, and others, which I may have missed.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, for that very warm introduction. I think Urvashi was very generous. I don't have an MBA, I have a master's in communication, all right. But that aside, thank you so much once again for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. Before I share my perspectives on this question, I just want to reiterate that all of us are here in our personal capacity. And what we share today is more from an educational standpoint, and it has to be seen in the spirit of that. Okay. Wonderful question to start this session with. This is a black box for people who are often part of these roles as well as those outside of the industry. So I'm going to, have a rather simplistic explanation for what is really what. Okay. Marketing is about the message. Business development is usually about the relationship. Sale, as is very clear to most people, is about the transaction. Practice development is about enhancing your competitiveness as an organization. Okay. Another way to look at it would be that, sales is immediate, business development is ongoing, and marketing is very futuristic. All right. Having said that, in professional services firms, including in law firms, many times the boundaries between these three are blurred. And that's for the simple reason that in part, as well as to deliver on the job, rests with the partner, right? So you will see a lot of firms that will have some variation of these functions with an emphasis on maybe one aspect and not so much on the other aspect, right? What I have usually seen is a lot of firms will have business development people, but very few folks who focus on marketing, right? At the same time, increasingly, I see organizations that have a chief innovation officer title, right? Now, the innovation could also be client-specific innovation, all right? So depending on what is it that your firm really wants to achieve, the role really gets shaped with respect to that, right? But in the larger, world outside of legal services, outside of professional services, these are what these definitions typically stand for. Okay, and I hope, I don't know if I can make it any simpler than that. Right?
I think that was very to the point. And in fact, so let me just take this forward, Archana.
Yeah.
So how would you, how does, or I mean, these terms, whether it's Corcom or Marcom in the legal industry, really differ from the industries such as, top of the mind is FMCG or pharma?
Yeah. So look, the difference is in the nuances, and the difference is in the kind of limitations that the environment poses on you, right? I'm someone who likes to believe that most of these definitions are still sort of valid in the legal industry. We have an additional set of, let's say, limitations posed on us by way of the Bar Council of India, wherein we can't advertise, right? Advertising or soliciting for business is just one part of the larger marketing, business development, sales portfolio, right? So when you don't have access to just that one part, you have to find ways to make the other parts work for you, right? So if you were to go to an FMCG organization, right, there would be further categories within what we call practice development and what they might call new product development, new service development, innovation, right? What we call as business development, they will call as channel partnerships, distributorships, right? So the terminology might change, but the sum total of what they really imply is pretty much the same.
Let me ask you this, that, which functions in your experience manifest within the legal industry?
Okay. Thank you for having me on board, Priyanka. And Archana provided a really good explanation in a very simplistic manner. So in my experience of working with different law firms and on the basis of interaction with industry peers, I feel different organizations, different law firms are at different stage of marketing, practice development, Marcom, sales, etc. So there are firms which are, tier one, they are big firms. They have dedicated budgets, they have an ambition to scale, and they are very hungry for growth. So they have different people and different departments handling these functions. Where a practice development head is a different from a marketing head, an international relations head, a public relations head, and like that. Then there are firms who have now risen to the idea, okay, yes, this is important, we want to do it. They are maybe the mid-sized firms, they want to be there, they want to grow. And but they are still very conservative in loosening their purse strings. So these kind of roles are integrated into a single spoke, which is heading these smaller who is heading these smaller verticals as a practice development / marketing head and taking care of all these things. And at last, there are firms which have been lucky. They have very strong expertise in their subject matter, or they have good clients, and they do not want to look beyond that. They are just working on focusing those clients happy and getting more and more work out of them. For them, this department still does not exist, and they are the managing partner, or the fee earners are the ones who are doing everything. However, still these third level of firms, they have started engaging the outsourced service providers, and there are a lot of companies who are handling this kind of work for them. But when you look at the external communication that is coming out of these three different kind of firms with one person, separate department, and no existing practice development and Marcom team, you notice the difference in the kind of communication that comes out of these firms. So yes, we add value, and it depends, how much you want to extract out of us. And yes, technology is playing its part in that. So, and lastly, I see marketing is a means to practice development. So there has to be a strategic integration in both the departments. They have to work hand in glove, and they cannot look in different directions while serving the objective of practice development for the firm.
So I think, so what I basically hear is that it is, which we all agree to, is that it's an evolving space within the legal industry. And Khushboo, as you rightly said, that depending upon the size of the firm or size of the business, it would depend how nuanced each of these functions are. In many, it would be all bundled in one. In many, in the larger ones, there would be separate people handling separately. So in fact, there was an interesting thing that you just said about outsourcing. So any one of you who would want to say that, does this outsourcing, do you really feel, do you think it really does justice to what the organization, the business or the firm would be wanting to achieve? Anyone who would want to take this one?
So Priyanka, if I understand your question correct, you're saying outsourcing marketing, business development as a service. Right. Is that something that's feasible for organizations?
Especially in the legal industry, because
in the legal industry,
there would be some amount, there has to be a certain level of subject expertise which is required.
Absolutely. See, it's very common in most industries, not just legal, for you to work with freelancers or for you to work with agencies till you reach a certain scale. See, marketing is aspirational, right? And marketing, at times, there is a cost involved in it. Right? So unless you come up to that critical mass, it may actually not make sense for you to have an in-house team doing a whole host of activities, right? So agency setups, working with agencies, with freelancers is extremely common, right? And it's not about, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It really depends on what stage that company is, that firm is in its maturity journey, in its growth journey. So you will see when firms start out, they will barely do any marketing. And like Khushboo said, it's a very personality driven kind of word of mouth marketing that happens, right? If you know the lawyer, then you get business. A brand is built basis the lawyer's personality, right? And if you're a firm of that nature and you want to keep it that way, right, then that's what works for you. Then you probably don't need a large team in-house doing this. You can work on a need basis with specialists and agencies.
Yeah. So in fact, since we are on branding, so Ashima, maybe you can talk a little about this. In the legal industry, if you look at branding, it encompasses various aspects. It could be personal branding, firm branding, talent acquisition. So how do you, perceive the significance of branding in the legal industry?
Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you for that question. And once again, a brief caveat that these are all my personal views. Coming back to the question, like has been said by Archana and Khushboo, branding marketing is something that's frowned upon as a term, which shouldn't be the case, especially in today's time. Unfortunately, we are still, eons away from really integrating marketing in the spirit of it into the industry. However, branding is something which is, how do you see it in a consumer, product industry? It's a catchy logo or a tagline. That's what people would generally understand branding as. However, it's much more than that when it comes to a service industry. How do you humanize a service? How do you instill some sort of a promise or faith in your service when you have so many lawyers? And when we speak of branding, we only think of, the brands we know of, like maybe tier one law firms who are so established over the years. They're legacy law firms. But what about a new law firm? How do you emerge from the shadows of these firms that have been before you and the people who've been before you and done the same work? It is that USP that you have to showcase. It is that branding that comes into place at that point. You can be an individual, you can be a lawyer, you can be doing something, you can be a vendor, like we just discussed, you could be a freelancer in the legal industry, and now you need to brand yourself. So it's essential to the work that you do. And for many reasons that today you're known by who you are, and who you are is basically your digital presence, your offline presence. This can be the knowledge sharing or dissemination that you do. This can be your conferences. This can be your thought leadership through your articles. There are various means and media through which you're doing this, but at the end of the day, this is bringing the organization closer to its clientele or the people. It's legal education, it's legal awareness. And the thread that binds it all is, in my opinion, the branding itself. So as strong as your brand is, when you go out and you say Tata, there's a sense of dependence and reliability that we will all suddenly not do. If you speak of Apple, you will say, okay, yeah, we recognize this as, an innovative thought leader. So at various levels, you will need this kind of branding to be attached to you. Maybe you're somebody who's taking care of a matter end to end, and people know that you will be doing their matter single-handedly, and because you're a boutique law firm, they will come to you, and at crunch hours you will be the one to go to. But if it's something else, maybe it's a global jurisdiction that you're looking at, suddenly a name will pop up and you will be like, okay, I need to go to XYZ law firm, because you know that is the work they do. And how do you know it? Because of the branding. And the means can be different because of a digital content or anything else, but the bottom line being that that's your brand.
Anyone, Khushboo or Archana, you'd want to add to that?
I think I just want to add one thing. If you don't consciously build your brand, someone else will build it for you. Okay. So it's better you proactively understand what is it that you would want to be known for, rather than let people decide what is it that they want you to be known as.
Really, that's going to be my first takeaway from the webinar today.
Yeah. So to add to this, the traditional approaches to marketing, industry chambers, networking events, referrals, conferences, all of this have been there and they will always be there. But today, in continuation of what Archana said, when you are going for a meeting, your social media presence, your digital presence reaches the room before you do. So they already have an impression about you when you're entering a meeting room. And all these cross-selling collaborations, all of these, even though are the nucleus of marketing and practice development, at the end of the day, if you are not present in the outer ecosystem of LinkedIn, Mondax, Lexology, or YouTube, telling what you are, how you are different from others, then they might have doubts in your capabilities.
So how else is all of you briefly touched upon how technology is being leveraged. Are there other ways in which technology is further being leveraged in outreach and communication, which is being done by each one of you?
Ashima, do you want to start with this one, or Khushboo for that matter?
Yeah, we cannot have a discussion without technology coming into the conversation.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Khushboo, maybe because Khushboo has more experience at the tech side. So Khushboo, why don't you take this first and we'll join in.
Thank you. So on the technology front, earlier we used to say in marketing, you don't know which half of the marketing budget is working. Now with technology and analytics in play, you cannot say that I don't know which half of my marketing budget is working. And connecting it to my previous point of using, this different kind of social media, digital, these blogs like Mondac, Lexology, Bar and Bench, Live Law, where all of us want to get noticed. We want to be there. We want to reach out to our target audience. And when they are coming to meet you, they are certainly going to have an impression about you in their subconscious mind. We can call it subconscious marketing as well. And you don't know how the dots will connect, but all these things have a role to play. And in terms of technology, as I said, the different kind of firms are at different level of technology integrations. I have worked with a firm which has implemented complete digital ecosystem. There is an ERP which is integrated with website, your email marketing, your this internal practice management for different teams. But there are firms, when I speak to my peers, there are firms who are still evolving to this, and they are still setting up their email marketing and other related practices. So when you are looking at technology, leveraging technology, you have to make sure that you have a scale in mind, you have a vision in mind, that where you want to be 4-5 years down the line. Don't look at the present moment. Okay, this is the problem that I am facing and I need a technology to solve this problem. Look, what will you need 5 years down the line? Assume that you have already done that. Assume you have solved the problem you're trying to solve, and how you would want to scale it and create a better experience for your internal teams and external data contacts and clients that you want to stay connected with. So it has to have a futuristic perspective. Only then you can leverage the technology, be it for CRM, be it data scraping tool, be it integrating your website with your internal, lead generation models and all those things.
Ashima, you want to add
Sure,
next?
sure, Priyanka. So, there are two parts to it as I see it, Priyanka. One is when you're trying to find innovation in the practice of the firm. So you're responsible for probably going out and searching for the kind of technology that will help your firm do their work faster. It can be an e-discovery software. It can be a document management software, which is so customized to your practice. And that, again, as we're speaking of careers, I think it's a great avenue in itself, where if somebody could bridge that gap between one sort of a practice needing a certain kind of a tech or a software built just for them, I think tech providers could really use that kind of a collaboration and come out with solutions. There's gigabytes and gigabytes of data that needs sorting when time is short and you have to run your deliverables. I think that's a whole different space. Now, if I was to speak of just the branding part and the tech that comes into it, like Khushboo, nailed it, that now you can no longer say that, you don't have the data or which part of your, experiment is working or not. You have to actually run with your data. You have to see where your, potential clientele is located, what region, at what time are they looking into your newsletters or your posts, what is working for them, what is your engagement rates. All of numbers tell a story, right? So you know that what is happening is, how do you want to now tweak your approach to a certain kind of cadence that you've set for yourself? Maybe you want to increase it, maybe you want to decrease it. It also helps, technology is also useful in the way that, you're reaching out beyond your certain borders. So at that point, I'd just like to add that, one has to be careful of which jurisdiction you're dealing with. If you're dealing with, some GDPR clientele or people in that region, then your role is not so limited as to say that, okay, we just give our content across the world. You have to be mindful of some of the compliances that you need to adhere to when it comes to dealing with GDPR or other things. You can't bombard them with your newsletters. So in a space like ours, I think there is integration, there is intersection of law at every point, and these departments need to work closely with the law firms in this sense that you have technology coming in, you have to either weed out what jurisdictions need not see your content or who needs to see it. All of this cannot be done manually, and so you have tech for it. And I think it's the lifeblood of organizations these days, and it's going to be even so in times to come. Archana and Priyanka, back to you.
I'd like to sort of summarize a response based on what both of you said. And I'll just, provide a very macroscopic view, because both of you have given a lot of instances in terms of how we use it in a marketing context, how you use it in a practice development context. I think for me, technology has always been an enabler. It is one of the pillars that helps the firm sort of accomplish its vision, right? To that extent, extent you could use technology internally within the marketing function itself, whether it's to drive operational effectiveness, it's to build processes and scale them for collaboration, as well as for client experience. Okay. Externally, of course, most of us today are present on digital platforms. We use that as an avenue to build awareness about our firm's work, right? But I think, the approach shouldn't be tech first and something else later. It has to be, look, what's the firm's vision? Where do I want to be? And how much can technology play a role in taking me to where I want to go? Right? That's how I sort of see it.
So clearly, technology is an enabler, and I would totally agree that not tech first. Where and why you want to use and how you should be using is something that needs to always be in your conscience. And definitely, we cannot work without technology either, because given that it helps you do so many more things and so much faster, and of course the response and the matrix, etc., are available so readily that which has pros and cons like everything else it will have. But yeah, largely I would say pros if you're using it responsibly. So while we have a lot of youngsters, so let's talk about let's move to the career aspect of it. So what can a career in practice development and Marcom or Corpcom mean for anyone who's looking at this role? And what would be the essential skills and attributes that the employers may be looking at when they're hiring for these roles? So whoever, Ashima, you would want to go for it first?
Sure, Priyanka. Thank you. I think we all know that this is one booming industry nowadays, that people are interested in all these essentially known as support functions, in the industry, because you're not a billable resource, but everyone is here to speak of. I steer away from the term marketing, but let's just say for the ease of conversation that marketing, branding, all of these aspects are careers that have people interested. But I'd like people to know in these careers that somebody who's trying to think of a switch and is a litigating lawyer, or somebody who is used to a lot of outdoors, should know that this is, at the end of the day, is a desk job, which with a lot of creative differences that can come up when you're dealing with so many people coming on board with a decision. Because the firm has a vision, it has a mission, and you're essentially there to execute that and bring on board everyone, when you're doing something for the firm itself. So, the skill set that one requires for doing this is, of course, something that one picks up on the job, because one firm is going to have a very different means of operating than the other. One mission and vision of a firm can be very different than the other. How I like to approach this and understand a firm's operation deeply and how you add value to it is my own way of figuring this out, has been 5 W's and 1 H. So what I would like people to know is, I go about, put me in any industry, any point of time, I would first do my ground research with who am I working with? Who is the firm that I'm representing? Who are the stakeholders with me? Secondly, what is the firm's practice and expertise? What is it that they're trying to brand themselves on? Third, where is my clientele? Is it domestic? Is it international? What are the jurisdictions or regulatory environment that they're operating in? So I understand that, what am I dealing with? How much of an update would they require? What is the industry that I need to constantly keep myself abreast with? Then once you know that, you have to know, when do they need your services? Is it something they need on seasonal basis, or is it something that they need round the clock? So you're also certain as to how much update, or at what point do you need to keep them updated. Then is, why should they come to you at this point? How are you the different, what is your USP in all of this? And suppose your expertise lies in pharma or auto or XYZ, then this is where, how do you plan that branding for yourself? And eventually it comes to the 1 H that I spoke of, which is me doing my job. So how do I connect these pieces of the puzzle for the organization that I work with? What if I'm a practice development officer or a practice innovation officer, my duty also lies within the firm to ensure that my firm is future ready. They have the right exposure to the resources or technology to meet the 5 Ws that I spoke of. So that is the way that one can navigate this. At the end of the day, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. All these answers lie with the leadership. It's just what you ask and when. And sometimes you might need a little more convincing as to why you need this information, because you need to, suggest, and you're just experimenting sometimes, and you to justify the experiment. So that requires pushing back a little bit. But anyone who's interested in this avenue should actually do their research within the firm. And my advice would be, carry on asking, and make sure that you keep your thinking caps on at all times and keep experimenting.
Those are very useful bits of advices.
Nice.
So if Khushboo and Archana, you could add a bit on, what could, what are the different kind of roles or tasks which a person would expect to be. I mean, I can totally understand that different firms would have, different sets of tasks which are or roles. But if you could throw a little light so that people know that, what could they expect to be doing.
So I would like to add here, Ashima very beautifully summed it up all together. Just to add to that, we are in a very mighty position because you are, working directly with the decision makers, one partner or many partners, and implementing the vision for the firm. And in this role, you have an opportunity to leave a legacy for your successors and for the brand. So be it your website, be it a CRM that you develop, or a title, a thought leadership event that you have created as a conference property for the organization. So there are a lot of opportunities. So skills that you need is you have to have an entrepreneurial bent of mind. You have to be self-starter. And you have to get the basics right. So it's okay if you haven't studied law, because there will be opportunities in this role when someone might come and tell you, oh, you haven't studied law, you won't understand this. I have studied law, but I still feel that there are people who haven't studied law and they understand it better because they have taken genuine interest in the business, in reading what a Section 9 of insolvency law means, what is an enforcement of foreign award, or what are the amendments introduced in Companies Act or Contracts Act. So if you are well versed with the business of the firm, you take genuine interest in the work your partners do, your teams do, you socialize with them and try to absorb that knowledge, it is going to help. These are the skills that you essentially need. And one skill that you need is diplomacy, because what is happening is there are overlapping practice areas and conflicts within different practice groups. At times they are vouching for similar kind of work. So you have to make sure how you are playing your cards right and getting right people on board when you are representing the organization in any forum, be it online or physical meeting. You have to ensure that partners are in sync with you and the Marcom vision of the firm is in line with the partner's personal fee earning and rainmaking objectives. So that has to be taken care of.
I think both Khushboo
Yeah, so
and
not doing a law degree, something which Archana would totally reiterate, since, yeah, Archana, please.
yeah. No, I was just saying that Ashima and Khushboo have pretty much summed it up. I don't think I have much to say. All I'll say is what can you look forward to is a lot of excitement, chaos, and opportunity to build systems and processes, and a lot of visibility. We are in general a very small community of specialist leaders. So we have that first mover advantage of being far more visible than, say, someone who is in marketing in the retail or consumer goods industry, right? So those, I would say, are what one can, sort of look forward to, right? On Ashima's specific point on these being desk jobs, at least in my firm and in most of my career, I haven't spent more than 30% on the desk, literally. Okay. So I guess it really depends on what is your definition of the role, what is your organization's definition of the role. And if there are synergies there, then the role doesn't have to be a desk job based role, or doesn't have to be a completely out and out, I would say, an ecosystem building kind of a role where you're outside the firm all the time, right? So that really differs. The other thing that I have categorically observed, and this is also because unlike other functions in a law firm, unlike the billable roles in the law firm, there isn't a very clear defined hierarchy, career progression when it comes to these roles. I won't call them support roles. I always call them enablement roles, because I feel
Absolutely.
if you don't have an enablement role, then there's no point in you going in billing time. You'd just be frustrated, because there are things that lawyers bring to the table, and then there are things that the other specialists bring to the table, and we have to sort of coexist. So I would not say one is greater or lesser than the other, right? Although historically these positions have been seen as less valuable because we don't have a way to measure the impact that these functions bring in. When you're a billable resource, your value to the firm is very clearly quantified. How many hours have you charged, and what has been the corresponding billing, right? So the way I look at it is, it's role specific. It does not define your career. There's nothing to say that if you've done professional services marketing, you can't do any other kind of marketing, or vice versa, right? Like Ashima said, you have to understand the business first before you qualify to be able to go out and talk about it, or to project it in a certain manner, or to build a brand in a certain manner. There are linkages within functions that you should be aware of, right? And I've realized, therefore, that some of these roles may not always be fresher friendly, because again, being a very nascent function, there isn't a well-developed learning program that comes with functions like this, right? Large organizations that have had functions like this for at least a decade may still be able to have some sort of learning and development to induct people into the organization, train them, right? But for very nascent teams, you may not have a structure like this. You may not have access to learning development, or you may simply not have the time, right? In such cases, the preferred option is, look, you pick up someone who has at least a few years of experience, because they have a fundamental understanding of how business works, right? How do you really make money? How does the firm make money, right? Sometimes with freshers, that angle is really missing. They come in with a lot of theoretical knowledge, right? And someone has to spend the time and effort explaining to them how the nuts and bolts, work in reality, right? So I would really sort of sum it up that way.
A follow-up question on this, a lot of law graduates or working professionals also, they have this question that if we were to get into these roles, is it that my legal knowledge of 3 years or 5 years will completely be, do I get to utilize my legal knowledge or subject knowledge at all? So what would you say to that?
I would really say it is helpful if you have done law, but it's not an indicator of your success in this role, right? The role per se does not require you to have a legal degree, which means you will also compete with people who don't have a legal degree, such as me. I don't have a legal degree, right? But then Khushboo has one. But both of us have the same job for our respective firms, right? So it's important to understand what is it that you would really like to do. So if you're a lawyer, would you like a role that's a blend of your legal knowledge plus something else, right? So for instance, in many organizations, you will see a team that operates as paralegals do, right? That provides knowledge management services, that provides research services, which are very technical. Now, someone like me may not be able to come up with that level of, how do I say, quality as someone with a legal background can, right? So in such cases, a role like that, which actually utilizes your legal qualification, may be a better fit than just marketing. Let's say marketing is about the business of law, right? So what you can use is you've ever serviced a client, if you've ever worked for a client, that is an experience that you can bring to this role. But if you just have an academic degree, like an LLB degree, how much of that can you translate into this role? That's very challenging to say, because you're not dealing with documentation. You're going to be dealing with a completely new ecosystem altogether.
I would say good to have, but not mandatory.
Good to have, definitely not mandatory. And even if it's good to have, definitely not an indicator of how successful or not successful you can be.
You would want to add something to that?
Yeah, so I just would like to add, I completely agree with Archana. A law degree will only get you a foot in the door. Maybe a managing partner or the group of partners that you are going to be working with, they will give you some initial feeling that, okay, you are one of them because you have a law degree, but later on, it does not help. So in my case, when I got into my first Marcom role, I realized the only thing where my law degree helped me was that my CV was shortlisted amongst the various CVs for the interview. After that, and the knowledge that I gained in my education, I feel that not that, but my interaction with my colleagues, informal interactions, hearing the conversation in the office corridors, listening to the speakers in different kind of conferences, and sometimes cursory reading of the articles that they are writing has been more helpful than reading of those bare acts, which we did in my college education. So that's my take on that. Yeah.
Ashima, anything you would want to add to that?
Sure, Priyanka. And in my case, my degree has been the mainstay for whatever I've done, because it has helped me all through. I was a practicing lawyer in between. So besides that, also my degree came in great use when I was doing legal content, I was doing legal research, I was doing knowledge management. So it really depends on the role that you undertake and where you want to use it. For a marketing role, of course, a law degree wouldn't be as useful. But when you're actually the only person tasked with ensuring that you have a blog going and you're the one who's even writing it, it's not as if somebody else is sending you the article and you're just editing it and then publishing it. If you're the wholesome person, and generally these roles come with one person sort of slot, you're a one person army in most firms until they scale and you have 4 to 5 people in the team. So therein, when you are tasked with something like this and you don't want to continually go to a partner or an associate or somebody else in the firm and be the person who's knocking on doors all the time, it helps to have your degree and to be able to end-to-end take care of certain assignments like these, even when you're making your social media posts about a legal update. Or when I was a legal journalist, of course, all throughout when I was doing my conversations, it helped me monumentally to have a degree to understand what an amendment actually means. How does it differentiate from where we were before and where it takes us now? So those conversations, of course, became meatier because of my background in law. Other than that, there are roles where you can have somebody helming the department can have this or not, but at somebody who's just starting out, they need not necessarily have a degree. But if they're interested in, say, reporting from a court, they need to have a degree. If they're interested in writing knowledge papers, they need to have a degree. And if they're just doing digital marketing, if they're just kind of limiting themselves to the creative side of things and not really the technical legal writing, then of course, those are the choices that they can make. And to a question that had been asked earlier as to, if you're, is it a, like, for instance, at my role, I even tend to look into the contract sometimes. So, I act like an in-house contract reviewer. Now, if if you go into a role at a senior level and you're tasked with more responsibilities, all your degrees and your educations and diplomas will become a melting pot of who you are, and no education really goes to waste. So, all of that really comes in handy when you're in that kind of a role. And one more thing I just wanted to add about, like Archana said, and I totally agree with her, that at the senior level, you're probably not looking at this as a desk job. But maybe when you're just starting out, I just wanted to make sure, because I've seen a lot of people who get disheartened by the time, by the number of hours that they have to spend within a firm while they're doing these things. So just for them who are starting out, it's a note for them to take away, that it can lead to a desk job. And if you're somebody who is used to going to courts, this can come as a bit of a culture shock. But other than that, I also agree with this being a support or an enabling function. And of course, we've all seen the merits of these functions existing as and when things are going forward. So back to you, Priyanka.
So while we are, Ashima, talking about non-traditional careers, and you have pursued such roles throughout your own career, anything additional that you would want to add, or any advice that you have for individuals who may be considering or seeking these non-traditional career paths?
Thanks, Priyanka. That's a good question. As to, already I've, said a lot of things in my other answers, but one thing that goes with a non-traditional role is experimentation. So you have to be able to start from zero every time that you experiment. Of course, your knowledge and your experience comes in, and it really pushes you through. But for instance, when I start out in a law firm, I have to forget that I was a legal journalist and I have to start anew. Before that, I was a legal writer, and then I went into journalism. So I had to forget I was a legal writer and then get into another sort of a role. So you have to be able to go through that kind of a graph where you're, learning and then unlearning and learning. And if that is something that people don't want to do, then a non-traditional role is not going to be suitable, because you have to kind of go through the rigmarole of learning and unlearning. And sometimes that, I feel that people, one thing that always, the quote that I go to is that, you may find yourself scared because you're in unfamiliar territories, but not because you're incapable. So, once you're on the roll, you'll realize that a lot of the things can be done by just on the job learning, and don't be scared of starting out. Don't say no to anything, So there's no playbook for you, because like Ashna said, we don't have sort of a learning and development for each kind of these roles. But as you go along, you'll find your path.
Thanks, Ashna. Ashima, Khushboo, having completed an MBA followed by a law degree, it would be interesting to know how your legal education has influenced and contributed to the various roles that you have undertaken in your professional journey. You did touch upon quite a few facets. Anything else that you would want to add to that?
Frankly, I just would like to say we have live example of Archana in front of us. You don't need a law degree to really create a mark in this role. I don't want to, I don't want to be blowing my own trumpet. I mean, I don't want to be blowing our own trumpet, but I feel a good marketeer will be able to sell anything, or any can help in improving any practice, because you have to have your basics right. We are living in a technology enabled era where, the quantification is everything. You are doing account based marketing. You don't need to know, which what are we advising to that client, the matters that we are working on, but what we need to know is which newsletter should be emailed to this particular account to get more business. So that is what a data hygiene is. I just wanted to give a small example to make my point. And you need to understand the SEO and the right keywords about your business that will get people on your website. You don't need to understand the law.
So I think pretty much what we are saying is that career paths can cross, and a degree cannot really confine you. And as you rightly said, we have Archana as a live example for this. So as a wrap-up question from my side, and we can actually not end without discussing this, that, what are the challenges that you all face in the roles and the hats that you don right now? And especially now with the foreign lawyers and law firms being allowed, albeit conditionally, that just being one of the aspects, but what would the challenges be?
Right. Let me perhaps share a perspective on the the foreign law firms, the imminent entry of foreign law firms. Okay. And the way I sort of look at it, there is an implication on three types of stakeholders. There is an implication on talent, there's an implication on client, there's an implication from a competition standpoint. But the good news is, I feel marketing, business development, communications, all of them play a very strong role, or will go on to play stronger roles than what they've been playing so far, right? So let me give you a couple of examples. From a talent standpoint, there is obviously more choice and employment opportunities for young lawyers who perhaps want the experience of working for an international law firm and sort of see the benefits and understand the limitations themselves, right? And some may actually choose to work in those roles, which may be seen as, I would say, more desk, less running around in the courts, therefore more structured, more tech-led, a lot more structured compared to what some of their counterparts may be doing when they work with pure play Indian law firms, where there's sometimes a high degree of subjectivity, right, in how you work, right? Your timelines may not be fixed, and that over a period of time doesn't really suit people, right? Now, how can Indian firms address this sort of imminent threat, right? That's by demonstrating commitment to best people practices. Right. And this is where, again, the marketing team, your communications team will play a very, very huge role in communicating to young lawyers. What can they really expect when they come to work at, say, firm A, right? What is the culture like? What kind of people work for us? Is it a diverse set of people, or, are we firms that hire typically from a narrow set of industries, right? What are the pros and cons? That's a huge opportunity. If Indian firms can clearly demonstrate that, right, then it makes it easier to attract and retain the right kind of talent. And I say right kind of talent because, you can't be everything to everybody, right? There is therefore nothing called the best organization in this world, in any industry, right? You can be something to somebody, better than meaning nothing to everybody, right? So that's a key role. Now, from a client standpoint, there are, capability and customer experience related aspects which will come into play when you have a foreign firm coming in, right? Increasingly, Indian and multinational clients, they expect law firms to demonstrate how they deliver top-notch advice and top-notch service, right? Which means greater transparency in operations, billing rates, your operating models, lawyer skilling, right, to optimize time, cost. All of these are expectations. And if you can demonstrate as a firm how you do this, right, then that is seen as a key reason why clients want to continue working with you, right? And this is typically what, again, where your marketing team, your BD and communications team can come in and communicate this effectively to clients. This may not be publicly communicated, but to the client, it should be communicated in a manner that they understand, and it has an impact on either, more business or renewals or whatever your, your assessment criteria are for success, right? That's one. Obviously, from a competition standpoint, you can expect a few things. There will be very clear differentiation in terms of firms who are able to position themselves in a certain way versus firms who are not able to, right? We are already seeing some signs of consolidation, some signs of collaboration in the market. More of this will come. Those who perhaps don't have the means and the inclination to position themselves will want to form these alliances, right, with other organizations who can bring in those best practices, right? Again, this is an area where your marketing business development teams can make a whole host of difference, because you can go back and communicate this very effectively to the entire legal ecosystem, right, as to what is the benefit of an alliance like this, right? So I feel the imminent entry of foreign law firms is something that's a huge opportunity for business development professionals, marketing and communications professionals. I don't really see that as some kind of a challenge, right? It's an opportunity, I would say, for folks like us to demonstrate what is the value we can bring in from a strategic standpoint. And these opportunities don't come often, right? I mean, it's not every day that a law firm calls you and says, look, I want to transform my business. Tell me where I should be 10 years down the line, right? Doesn't happen. But this is one such opportunity. It's a market imposed condition that will force firms to think of what is it that they want to be known for in the future, right? So I don't see red flags at all when it comes to this.
Challenges, Ashima, which you
So Priyanka, currently, I think the only challenge being is the fact that there's no level playing field. But I also see this as an opportunity, like Ashna said, for this to become a level playing field for our domestic players. So, this is the time where we become in step with the time. Finally, we agree and bring in all the marketing tools in our armory to, go all guns blazing. So I think this is that opportunity, and I look forward to that that time where we can actually do all this without having to worry about certain compliances.
your words.
Yeah. So I completely agree with what Archana said. Only analogy that I would like to share here is in India currently, we have a very wide difference in the kind of law firms that we have. So we have Japan-like first world countries, which are like super technically advanced and well-established processes. And then we similarly have people practicing in lower courts in Tisawari, which are, comparable to African country where there is nothing at all and they have no systems and processes in place. Once the foreign firms come in, there is going to be a professionalization. The law practice management as a field will grow. The surrounding ecosystem of service providers for the practice development, marketing, website, etc., it will flourish. And the market will consolidate because smaller and boutique firms, which have opened in last 10, 15 years, there have been so many of them. They might like to merge with the bigger players, Indian and foreign players. And it will be an interesting time to watch. One thing I noticed from our law practice management professionals perspective is there have been a lot of startups around supporting practice management, marketing and practice development in law firms. It will be interesting to see how these roles, how these small companies shape up. Because when you look at the West, when you look at UK or America, these kind of companies are very well developed, and all around I see is a lot of startups that are present in India right now. They are the fresh out of school law graduates. And I've just got into my new role here, and I feel this new firm is entirely different from my previous firm. The way they work, the style of business, the style of communication, everything is very different. So it will be interesting to see how many of these fresh startups around law practice management will survive and grow, and how many of how will they deal with the competition in the market.
I think what's interesting to see is that all three of you spoke about the challenges as opportunities. So I think that's a very constructive way of looking at it and approaching it. So while we have
there are 2-3 questions.
I was just looking at that. So one of the questions which we have not covered is wherein someone's talked about any thoughts on work-life balance in law firms. So there can be two ways of looking at it. Does the role in marketing, communication give you that work-life balance, or because otherwise, I guess law firms are really not known for that. So
I don't think, Priyanka, any industry is known for work-life balance. There was
that's
a
true,
time when
right?
the government job used to be, work-life balance. But I think in the last decade, ever since, the current government came to power, even there is no sense of work-life balance there, right? So I think what I have at least understood is work-life balance is in your hands. Today, no role is a fixed time role unless you work for an outsourced setup where they have thousands of people and they're very strict that you have a sign in time and a sign out time, right? And increasingly those roles are few and far in between, right? Because all of that is now moved on to automated machine learning kind of platforms, right? So there is no role today that will tell you what work life balance has to be for you, right? And as individuals, all of us function differently, biologically, intellectually. What is work-life balance for you may not be work-life balance for me, right? So it depends on how you manage your time, depends on how you set expectations with others, right? Uh, Sometimes this also becomes a function of the organization that you're a part of. So if you're a part of a slave ship, seeking independence is going to be tough. Telling people that, look, I will only work these many hours, or I will work between this time and this time, may not work if the larger culture is, with an expectation that it's a lights on all the time, 24/7, you're available, right? That's challenging. So understand what is the kind of culture in the organization. Although it may look like all law firms are pretty much slave ships and everyone's working away all the time, there are nuances. Look closely, you will see there are changes in how certain law firms operate versus how certain other law firms operate, right? So no company can give you work-life balance. That's been my learning out of 17 plus years of working. And I've worked across different industries. So across all those industries, it's what you want and what you can negotiate with your boss and your organization. So that's how I would like to really look at it.
Ashima?
Yeah, Priyanka. So, oftentimes when I'm asked about work-life balance, this is an anonymous person, but I would have much liked them to really define what is it that they seek when they speak of work and life balance. Is it that they need weekends off? There are firms that will give you weekends off. So your Monday to Friday can be really packed, but you will get your Saturday and Sunday. So then if that's work-life balance for you, you have that. And that's there for even lawyers. I mean, there are firms who are lawyers and will get their weekends off. So there are firms like that. If you're looking at retreats and, your, say your trips and all of that, your wind down time, your firm, there are firms that will have your December holidays and all of that. So, in a year, you will have enough times where you have a light month and, you can really take it easy. Then there are times when everyone knows this is the submission time, or this is something that's coming up, so you'll have to actually work around the clock. So you have to define, or you have to seek your work life definition, and that is where you'll be able to find those kind of firms. There are firms that will give you 2 days work from home. So if that's work life balance for you, then you can choose to work with those kind of firms. And now people are I actually want to say this for people who may be working mothers or new mothers, and I feel for them. Sometimes as a policy, it may not exist and nobody is going to say it on top of their lungs that, okay, we will give X, Y, Z. But once you're part of an organization, everyone's, like a family. So they will extend those courtesies to you. You will have, your balance where you see. You might have crashes at your offices. You even sometimes have pets coming to offices now. There are enough law firms who are even, doing that. So I want to put that word out for people that, yes, there is, I mean, not that this is, a place where, oh my God, you have like lights on all the time is yes, but then you have your time to wind down as well and enjoy your life. In the beginning, if you're a fresher, a year or two can be difficult because you're learning a job, and not just a legal job, any job. You're new to a job stream altogether. This can get overwhelming. But as you rise above and as you learn your own, learn the ropes, I think things get easier for you and you can then time things the way that you want. So those are my 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah.
You want to add something to that?
I just want to add, initially you have to slog in any role, but as you grow, you are able to set the expectations. It is good to set the expectations and fine, but you have to deal with the conflicting priorities every day. Every day is not the same. What you learn with experience is understanding and dealing what is urgent and what is important, what is urgent and important, and what is not urgent but important. So you have to you learn it as you grow in your career. So that's there, and that is what I would like to add.
So I would say that at the end of the day, it is about the experience. With experience, you also learn, and of
Yes.
course, we've all been through the grind as well till we learned a lot of things, and we found our own work-life balance. As Ashna said, that each one to one's own, and
Yeah.
what matters to you, you have to find that out, and you have to kind of make it work. So I think we have pretty much covered the questions which have been asked. There's one, Tushar says that can Indian law firms incorporate 5 days week work culture as a firm can see greater productivity than before? Tushar, again to this, I think it depends on each of the firms.
And
so
like sorry, Priyanka, to cut you short. Like I said, there are firms already who are on a 5-day week sort of a culture, and there are firms who are on a 4-day week with 1 day or 2 days being work from home. So it's about what suits you and where do you want to be.
And I think there's been one question on, if we can quickly just say that there has been this thing that what salary can a fresher expect in this field? I'm sure there's a range again, depending
Yeah.
on the size of the firm. So
I think there's probably just one thing. I've also messaged this individual. I think there's just only one very broad sort of way to find this out, if one could, because like all of you say, there isn't a set range. There is no salary range band that, you earn between this much and this much. It really depends on the firm, right? But what could be a pointer that you could look at is whether lawyers and non-lawyers get benchmarked in the same band, salary band, or they don't. Because I know some firms will differentiate between what they pay lawyers and what they pay non-lawyers, right? So there's a perception that because you can't directly bill a non-lawyer, it becomes, their worth to the organization becomes that much more complex to determine. So therefore, in terms of pay, they pay the lawyers sometimes more than what they pay the non-lawyers. But that again boils down to the firm. So if it's a firm like that, then one thing you can understand is if you're a lawyer and you choose not to work as a lawyer, you choose to work as a non-billable resource, then you will make less than a peer who's being billed to a client. That's probably the only sort of a pointer that at least I can provide, because there are no salary benchmarks, at least that I am aware of. It just varies very vastly.
that's what I would also think.
Yeah.
So another question is how to get internship opportunities in this area. I think again, this is about you just need to, these opportunities are advertised or published on various digital medias. I think you just need to kind of keep an eye out to see.
People can also reach out, Priyanka, actually, networking these days is all about really reaching out, seeing in a certain organization. For instance, we are here. If somebody wants to write to us on LinkedIn or somewhere else and ask us about the opportunities we may have or know of, because, we're in the industry, sometimes we know who's looking for, certain, where is a vacancy available. So I think one main point that I also like to leave people with is reach out and don't be shy to really ask questions, whether it is via email or LinkedIn or anywhere else that you can find somebody. All of us are open to answering any such questions. And it is always useful to reach out and ask that, I'd like show your interest and leave your CV with people. I think that's how I've seen things move wherever I've been. So that's my experience.
And perhaps one other thing to really add, I've usually observed that internships are very short. or they tend to be very short in the legal industry. I don't know if it's just my limited exposure in this area, but I've seen people not interning for more than 4 weeks. At best, it's 5 weeks, right? But I think for a function like marketing, if you don't have a background in this area, it'll be ideal if you can do longer internships, anywhere between 8 and 12 weeks. So if you can commit to that, that's when you also get exposure to different things that the team does. Otherwise, it becomes a very project specific exposure. And then you think this is all that the team really works on, right? Whereas if you spend longer with that organization and that team, you have avenues to work across different initiatives, different campaigns, different sorts of, different work streams within marketing and BD. So that's something that I want people to consider, because I often get CVs saying, I can work for this one particular month, right? So there is that. Yeah. And also I think what's important, I'll add to what Ashima said. It doesn't come out very clearly. Why is it that you want to do this? See, as a prospective employer, I have no interest in giving you a chance. I want to see, is it worth my while to let you operate here? So if you're just going to try your hand at something, don't make it that obvious. Put in some effort. I like to be wooed. I like to be told why you're special. Why do you want to do marketing, right? Because it's not easy. Yeah, it's not easy, right? It's not that it's the most natural thing that a lawyer does is, oh, I do law, but I go into marketing. That's not it, right? So I'd like to understand, what is it of interest in marketing? Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to try your hand? Like, are you good at writing? Are you good at research? Is that why you feel this might be a important area, right? And candidates who've done this, 9 out of 10, what I've seen is they have a very strong research focus. And then I direct them to my knowledge management team, because that's a better fitment for them than being a part of my team, right? So maybe a little bit of effort to sort of customize your CV a little to show anything related to marketing that you've done. See, if
And
you've
even
written
at college level, right? Ashima?
Even at
Like,
college level,
yeah.
see, if you've done events, if you've
Exactly.
been a part of the organizing committee for a moot court session or something like that. See, for me, my interest is, how did you put this up? Not so much that you presented a paper. I understand your subject matter expertise will be superlative because that is the degree that you've studied, right? Look, I look at an engineering paper, no great shakes. I've been there, done that. But I'm not competing for an engineering role, right? I'm competing for a marketing role. So for me, my area of interest is to know, how did you get that together? How did you liaise between different people? How did you manage the budgets? How did you measure success from an initiative like that? What tools did you use to be successful? So if a CV could, be customized to reflect on these aspects, rather than it being a very traditional lawyer CV, that would also improve chances of internships.
That's quite useful. So Khushboo, if you have something to add, and then I think we are at about 5:20. So with your thoughts, we could then.
Yeah, it is about reaching out. And when I do receive a lot of LinkedIn requests and emails for students seeking internship opportunity in practice development and have a law background. So you have to be very clear in your communication, and please make sure that your email that you are sending, especially for a marketing department, is grammatically correct and nicely presented, because that's a big turn off.
Rightly addressed also. I don't want to be some
Yes.
copy paste
Yes.
effort,
Yes. I have received emails from students where they have put all the HR departments of different law firms, and they have sent, hi, I'm seeking for an internship opportunities. I'm writing for an internship opportunity. And that is how crude they are. One time, once I received an email from a student who very nicely mentioned in that email that in my last internship, at the end of it, I got an honorarium of 10,000 rupees, which is an exception, which was an exception made because they liked my work. So indirectly, that person was telling that I am good at my work, so you give me a chance. So whatever your USP, if you're trying for marketing department, if you're able to present it well, that's there. And yes, reaching out on LinkedIn, and there are people who keep poking till you don't respond to them. It's somewhere I like it somewhere, because that shows persistence in the candidate, that they are really keen and focused for this role. So don't get disheartened with the no's, because there are a lot of things that are happening in office and personal lives. Every time we might not be, or anyone might not be able to respond to your email at the first instance. Keep trying. It is not difficult to reach out in today's age.
Right. And I just want to add one brief point as well, that sometimes these students reach out, and when I say this, that oh, reach out, they'll just say hi Ashima and leave out the rest of it. They'll expect me to say hi, and then they will say, oh, I am seeking an internship, or would you help with so and so. Just write your message in one go, right? So just say hi, I'm so and so, and I need to speak with you for an internship or your views on XYZ. Please don't leave a message that just says hi and then then you're away for me to, you're waiting for me to respond. So, or for any of us for that matter. So I think some of these skills are paramount when it comes to seeking any job. You have to have an interaction, or you need to have some soft skills per se when you are interacting with somebody, writing to somebody, addressing your emails correctly, proofreading them, writing to the right firm with the right name. Making sure Mr. and Miss, like you were able to check that who you're writing to, you don't address somebody incorrectly with their gender. These are very small, minute things, but they make a lot of difference.
Be formal in your communication. At times, there are students who write, hey, I'm not your buddy.
But you know what, Khushboo, I'd rather prefer a hey, because not just in the internship context, I've had very, very large organizations consistently make these assumptions. I don't know why, but my Airtel bill, I've been an Airtel customer now for 20 plus years. And for the strangest reason, they still refer to me as Mr. Archana Venkat. They've seen me a gazillion times. I've shared my Aadhaar copies with them. I've told them, please, I mean, I don't understand. Now it's come to a point where I just ignore it. And then there is a very leading, to be unicorn, which calls me, hey, bro. And the reason they refer to me as bro is I made the cardinal mistake of buying something for my husband's birthday from their website. So they assume I'm a man. So, I don't look at these things. I just try and understand from your message, why do you want to do this? Because look, if there is no fitment, right, then this will not be worth your time, won't be worth our time as well.
But Ashna, you would agree that you can't write I have an eye for detail when you're making these kind of mistakes.
Absolutely, that's a complete contradiction. You can't.
So just make sure that your skills are in line with the kind of communication you're sending, and that is Corpcom 101 for everyone.
Yeah.
But to know that there are common things which pain all of us, and I think on that note, thank you to all the panelists for doing this, and thank you for everyone who joined us. And a quick reminder that tomorrow we have Manisha, partner JSA, who will be talking about becoming a trademark lawyer. So do tune in. And thank you, ladies. Thank you so much again. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Khushboo and Ashna. It was really great being here.
Thank you, Ashima.
Likewise. All right. Bye.
Okay, bye.